You are listening to Come As You Are, the podcast. My name is Stephanie, and I'm joined by my two friends, Amanda and Tyler. We are a trio of coaches on a mission to ignite a collective movement where authenticity, self discovery, and purposeful living take center stage. Each episode, we go live in the Kaya way. Kaya is an open invitation to show up authentically and vulnerably. It's a safe space to allow ourselves to be worthy and enough now. It's a celebration of our individuality and diversity. So welcome to the show. We are happy that you're here, and we invite you to join us in today's conversation. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello, hello. I think you guys can hear me now, right?
Yes.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Is this on?
Yeah, exactly. I had one of those moments.
Excuse me. No. Good morning. Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. Y'all. I said before the show, I'm not going to talk a lot this episode because I'm sick but I am here showing up as we are. And yeah. And y'all, I'm stressed too. And like, that's a big thing. And I know the stress is like exacerbating the sickness and like, there's a lot going on in my world, but that's my morning check-in. How are y'all doing?
Well, we really appreciate you being here and showing up as you are, right? Sick and all, or half sick and all.
Yeah.
And also for bringing us so much inspiration today for what we got curious about, right? Because I got it on here today, and I was also like, my last week was so stressful because of an event, and I super stressed myself out. And we kind of realized that we're a bit in the same boat. So I think it's going to be a fun conversation today. And overall, this morning, I feel really inspired. I'm tired and very curious today. I have a curious Monday. Amanda, how are you?
I love when Stephanie has a curious mind. She asks all the great questions.
We already know it's gonna. I mean, we know already before we even show up, it's gonna be a great episode. But like, I feel like that's what was coming for me. I'm like, this is gonna be a super juicy episode today because we have so many like amazing, just real life things that are happening as always, but it's just so cool that we have such a beautiful space for it here. And so for me, like I'm checking in with this like rejuvenated energy with the time change and all those things. I'm like, I'm waking up even earlier because my body hasn't adjusted yet to the time change. So like, actually earlier I had extra time to like get some things done in the morning. I did an extra long meditation today. And so I'm feeling really rejuvenated. So I love this like stress and rejuvenation. Like, how cool.
I'm glad you're feeling rejuvenated and that the time change is like a wonderful thing for you because it's not. I hate the time change.
Yeah, I can't say I'm a huge fan when I'm like, 5 p.m. and I'm like, it's dark. What's happening? Like yesterday, especially, I'm like, oh, it's got to be like 10 o'clock. No, it's like 5 p.m.
Yep. I had that.
I find the summertime super weird. Like whenever we change end of March, it's like I can't deal with that. Like it's not for me. And so when we changed back last week or the week before, I was like, well, thank God. Like finally my inner clock is like, oh, no longer confused. It's just like 6 months of confusion and then 6 months of, yay, thank God. So I would vote for like getting rid of the summertime all over because it's messing with the body, right? It's messing with our inner biology.
But isn't it so fascinating how talking like environment, talking time, talking like all of this, like how susceptible our bodies are to changes like that? Mm-hmm. Like just an hour's change. We're not talking like the whole jet lag experience where you travel for like 9 hours and then you end up and you're like earlier than when you took off or, something like that. Like that's a weird experience. But I mean, we're so like our bodies are so susceptible to the environment and what's going on around us and all of these kind of things. And I think that's what led me to my illness, whatever it is. And this is a weird illness, y'all. Like, I'm breaking out, like my lips are all cracking and chapped and like it's gross, and I've got like sinuses dripping, and like it's just not fun. But it's like I was talking to one of my friends who does like human design work, and so she's like real into it. Like she's like a master certified human design coach, and she was going through my chart, and she was like asking me all of these very specific questions, and she's like, has this happened this week? And I was like, yeah. And then she was like, well, what about this? And I was like, oh yeah. And then she goes, oh, that's why you're sick. And like she like read my human design chart, but it was environment. She goes, you know, you've got a new job. Like I took on a part-time job. She goes, you're in a new environment, and you know, your body's adjusting to that. And then there's this. And I was like, wow. Like, but it's so fascinating that, I don't know, it's so fascinating that the human body responds so eloquently to these things. And it's really kind of beautiful to think about, even though it's miserable to be in the middle of it. It's still kind of a beautiful thing.
Oh gosh, you guys. Like, oh, talking about environments, I'm like, oh, the like feeling that energy, right? Of just like the stress and what that does. And I think even just in this conversation, I'm feeling like, I think this is like the long pause of like, oh my goodness, yeah, I can feel this in my body, right? And I can recall like times of stress, or many times where like the environmental factors and how these things really influence our health and just, you know, so many things. It's, yeah, it's really powerful. And kind of, I don't want to say crazy, but like kind of like this, like there's like a surrealness to it, right? That like we don't, I don't know, as we're going through the motions on a daily basis, I don't think you recognize it until something like big happens, right? Where you're like maybe really stressed and then you're getting sick, or, you know, you get diagnosed with something, or, you know, like these types of bigger things. I don't know that we go on a daily basis and really pay attention. That's something that I've been trying to do more lately, is be really mindful of my environment and taking in that my surroundings and really being present to that moment, especially now. I feel like with the changing of seasons, as we talked about, right? But like seeing the leaves change colors and really being super aware of just the beauty of nature, but like that we often go through, like there's been times where I'm going for a walk and I see this beautiful tree that all the leaves are changing colors, and I think, wow, was that tree there before? I mean, it's a huge tree, so it's definitely been there for a while, but I just maybe never noticed it, right? And so just this, like, this is a very small example. This isn't exactly like stress, but I do think that we do go through our daily where there's so many things that we're, you know, the to-do list or all of the things that we don't always realize how these things are impacting us. Does that make sense for you guys? And like, that was a whole lot in my head, but I don't know if that came out and made any sense.
Yeah, that totally made sense. And I'm wondering, like, isn't so much about us and the environment and like noticing there, actually just like noticing ourselves, like building that better relationship with our bodies so that we're able to notice these things? Like, I feel like you just don't go from like walking down the street with your phone to being this like very calm, zen, you know, grounded person who can like, wow, look at these beautiful orange, yellow fall leaves, you know, falling down. And so I think this is a journey, like a progress thing, definitely. And yeah, I feel like a lot of this has just to do with how we notice ourselves. Like how well are we able to notice the little clues our body gives us, like Tyler was saying before. And it's more like we are so distracted with all of this is happening around us. We don't even realize, I would say, how much we are being distracted. And so it's kind of this muscle that we no longer train. And then sorry, I just got like super lost my train of thought because Tyler was like spotlighting me, right? So I'm the only one you guys can see right now. And I'm like, wow, that just, we. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'll remove the spotlight. No pressure. No pressure.
I needed the support from you too. Sorry, just like visually. See, that was a distraction, right? That was a distraction. I was like, so what? This is very on point. Yeah. So I don't think we really realize let me start over. I don't think we realize how many distractions there are. And then once we start to build like a better relationship with ourselves, our bodies, and how does that feel, and how am I today, and what's going on, then we are all of a sudden realizing all the things that are happening, and not just like 10, but we were realizing like all the 50 things that are happening and distracting us. And that makes us feel more alive. Like I feel like when I really am able to, for example, stop, watch the rainbow, like I always feel like so silly when I'm coming out of the supermarket. I just had that happen like a couple of weeks ago. I'm walking out of the supermarket and there's this gigantic, beautiful rainbow, and everyone's just like walking by and, not really paying attention. Maybe there's one or two people taking a picture or whatnot. And I was just like, whoa, I was really just like standing there. And I felt a little silly. I'm not going to lie. I felt a little silly doing that in front of all these people who are, putting groceries in their cars and going into the supermarket or coming out or whatever. But it was really, I thought, yeah, those are my people, the people that stop for the rainbows. Have you ever seen these like posts online? The people I vibe with are the ones that stop for rainbows. And same with the tree and with the beautiful fall colored leaves. It's once we're able to really take that in, we realize we can really, I call it feeling more alive. I don't know if you guys have a better term for it. It's like, really being connected to life and not letting everything just go by on autopilot.
I also, excuse me, I also call that presence, is a good word I like to use, because I know for me, looking at all of this and looking at like the last couple of weeks of my life, like I have not been as present as I would like to be. And when I am not as present as I would like to be, I am not as aware as I would like to be, And this lack of awareness leads to, I think, what's happening right now in my body, which is like my body literally screaming to be like, slow down, Tyler, slow down. Like, stop what you're doing. Stop everything. Like, hit the brakes. And, sometimes sometimes I'm incredibly hard on myself. I'm not going to say sometimes. I'm all the time incredibly hard on myself. This is something that I've worked with through my therapist. My personal trainer has pointed this out. Like, I am incredibly hard on myself. But, growing up, I didn't really have parents who were strict. I didn't have parents who necessarily even cared or were that engaged. So I put the responsibility on myself to show up and to like perform well and to be the good student and things like that, because nobody around me was like holding me accountable. So I had to hold myself accountable. That's how I coped, that came out through, many conversations in therapy. I connected those dots, but, and so right now where I'm at with a competition coming up on Saturday, I'm incredibly hard on myself, and I have put a lot of pressure to get to Toronto and like win, even though like all I can do, and like this was the awareness that I had recently, like all I can do is show up and do my best. Like if I do that, I've won. Whether or not I actually take home the trophy or like get the actual placement, like that doesn't matter. But like in my mind, and I'm also really stupid competitive, like y'all. It's one of my toxic traits, I think. Like my sister refuses to play Yahtzee with me because I'm so competitive on stupid things like that. And it's a competition. So of course my competitive spirit comes out. Like over the weekend, I went to my friend's wedding, and which was a fun experience being sick, like totally different thing. But they threw the bouquet, and I got right in there and I got the bouquet because that's how competitive I am. Okay? And anyway, so that's one of my fatal flaws. Well, it's not a fatal flaw. I think it's actually a good skill to have in certain areas, but it also puts a lot of pressure on me. Like I put a lot of pressure on myself to go compete, to be the best, to do the best. And then what happens is I put so much pressure on myself, I make myself sick. Hence what is happening here. And this is what happens when I'm not present, when I am not just like in the moment. Like right now, I'll even be honest. Like I'm sitting here already think like I should just be totally in this conversation today, but my mind, y'all, is already like thinking about like driving to work this morning because I have to go into work and what's going to happen at the store and what, and it's like, Tyler, just come back here, like right here. This is the only thing that matters right now is the podcast, is this space. But I have like, and it's amazing because I've done a lot of work in terms of like practicing presence and meditation, and this is why it's a muscle that has to be developed, and it's a really strong muscle that you have to learn how to flex and use. And but it's like this is a skill that takes time to develop, and like the only thing that you can do is grow your awareness, is have that moment of like, oh, I really do need to slow down here, or oh, I really do need to be like talking kindly to myself in this moment versus like putting all of the pressure. And we're not naturally programmed to think like that or to operate like that. And I had a situation this weekend with my sister where she was going through her own episode of like panic, and I stepped in as the big brother and as the life coach of the family. I stepped in and I brought her back to present, and we like came into the now, and we did like breathing exercises together and all of these kind of things. And I was like, Emily, you see, like nothing's wrong right now. Like there's nothing is happening, because anxiety is all of the fear of the future, literally, like future thought. And I think depression is like past stuff. But and I was like, look, right now where we are, like this is perfect, and like we're all okay. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but like I just realized like I'm really hard on myself, and I know this, and it's something that I'm working on becoming better at, and I'm becoming kinder to myself. And I had a coach recently call me out. It was I'm in this like coaching program, like online membership community space, and the guy who runs it, he leads the coaching calls. And I was telling him, because the space is all about like showing up authentically on social media, like that's what he coaches people on, and so it's definitely my jam. And I was saying, I was like, every time I feel like I go put on, I go to do a post on social media, I feel like I have to perform, or I feel like I have to like put on some sort of act, and it feels artificial and it kind of feels fake. And he goes, you're very judgmental, aren't you? And like, we haven't like, this was like my first session with him. Like he does a group call, and it's first time joining the group call. And I was brave enough to ask the question, and he literally calls me out and he goes, you're judgmental, aren't you? And I was like, yeah. But and it is because I put so much pressure on myself that I then have the same kind of unrealistic expectations on others. And so like I'm constantly judging, I'm constantly critiquing myself, and that bleeds into others as well. And like, so it was a big wake up call for me to be like, oh, maybe I am judging other people, even though I want to say that I'm not. Probably secretly, yes, I am. And like, that's a hard thing to sit with. And this is why I'm always saying, like, the personal development work, it is the hardest work you will ever do in your life, because it is so confronting and it is so uncomfortable to sit there with a mirror in your face going, what do I need to change about myself? And what do I need to work on? And how can I improve? And there's a constant space for improvement. And but the weird thing is like, we're perfect now, you know, but there's always room for improvement. And so it's a really weird mix.
Oh my goodness. A whole lot of goodness there to unpack. I love it. Love it. And the things that are coming up for me is and I think we've touched on this, but like, I don't know if we've explicitly really said this, like, that the emotions that we feel, right? Because I think often when we think stress, like, I already feel like, you know, this heaviness in my chest, my heart starts racing, like, you just feel like constriction, and I don't know, it just not the most pleasant of feelings, right? But what I would love to highlight here is, like, as we're talking about emotion and connection to body, and then Tyler talked about a whole bunch of other amazing things, but I really want to highlight this, like, reminder, or these gentle nudges that we get in our body, right? Like, the stress kind of like shows us little things, and we get the nudges, and then we're not paying attention, and so then it's gonna scream at us and be like, hey, wait a minute, stop, slow down. And we get sick and all these things. So we're not, if it's either like we stop and slow down, or something's going to happen, then we're going to be forced to slow down, you know? And I think this is like, just what we're sharing today, this is like the perfect examples of that, right? Like, when we don't listen to our body, like the nudges, and also that it's not necessarily that stress is bad. Like, stress can actually be when we're feeling that and we have the awareness, as you're talking about, then we can do something about it, right? We can slow down, or we can use a different tool, you know, or anything like this, where it can help us to go through the stress, as opposed to the stress expressing itself maybe in like a sickness or something like that. And so I don't know, that's just what was coming up for me as you were sharing.
Yeah, 100%. And I would say that it's always like this, like the stuff that we don't want and that we shove aside, and we think, I deal with it whenever. It's gonna come up in the most unopportune moments. Like, for example, with Tyler, right before like a big speaking engagement, right? And it's gonna be really loud. Whereas maybe if we would have addressed it right at the beginning, you know, we would have maybe had some, you know, milder intervention, and then it would have been fine. We would have processed it all good. But now, you know, and I can just share like my own example, what I experienced last week. And this is why everything today is like lining up so perfectly, that I had this workshop, and I didn't have as much time to prepare for it as I wanted to. And so I was giving myself a really hard time. So I'm definitely like Camp Tyler, like super hard on myself. And like same backstory. So just copy paste that. And so I was constantly in this battle between, okay, I want to take care of myself, but I don't have time. I need to get this done. And so my body, you know, genius as she is, she was also at some point, look, I get it. This is important, but I'm here now. The workshop is not here now. Nothing's happening right now, but I'm here. And so I got really bad digestive issues, like so bad. I had these stomach cramps up until like 10 minutes even before the freaking workshop. And mind I say that the workshop was on stress and emotional eating. So it was really ironic for me. to experience exactly that, what I was teaching everyone in that workshop then. Like, and so, yeah, so I was sitting there with these really bad cramps, and I thought to myself, wow, how am I going to do that now with you know, what I'm going through? But it was so interesting to see, because I love that kind of work, right? Like, I love to talk to people about these topics. So as soon as the workshop started, I was just in flow. I was having fun. I was engaging with the participants. So the kind of like, my body was realizing, oh, okay, we're dealing with this now. Like, this is happening now. But before, my body was clearly telling me with these digestive issues, like, you're not okay. Like, you're under way too much pressure right now, and you got to take care of yourself, girl. And I tried to weave in some self-care here and there, but it just wasn't enough, right? And so then afterwards, after the workshop was done, it took me like a whole day. I was still struggling with like my digestion to just calm down from all of this. And then I started to like feel better over the weekend, really. But yeah, so this was just my example where had happened that to me recently. And it's so interesting what I've noticed and what I've already learned from this. It's like a little bit of stress. I think we all have our strategies, right? When we're in this self-development space, like, we have our little things. Like, some people like, oh yeah, I can just go for a walk, or I go and have a conversation with that friend, always makes me feel good. Or just have an evening in, you know, sitting on the couch or doing some meditation, all good. But there's also like, I feel like stress, there's layers, you know, there's a little stress, there's solid stress, and then there is like extreme stress. And the stuff that I was under was really extreme, like panicky, super overwhelmed, panicky stress. And that's when I decided for myself, okay, the softer strategies I usually use, they just don't do the trick anymore. And so I just really shoved it all aside. You know, I took all my stress and I was like, no, I don't want to deal with that right now. I'm not gonna. Like, I'm gonna power through. I'm gonna be the, you know, overachiever, perfectionistic, whatever person. And I'm gonna power through. And then my body was like, no, you're not gonna do that. You're definitely not gonna do that. So we are here. We have done some work. So you're gonna deal with the stress as it occurs and not later. So I would say I was walking, like, it's a tightrope walk, right? You have to constantly like balance and make decisions. Yeah, so it's definitely this like, for me, the lesson here is like, okay, I want to get more into, okay, what do I do when it's really panicky stress? Like, what can I do there? Because the low key stress, I feel like I'm really good at that at this point. But what do I do when there's more stress? Like, how do we deal with that? Because when the nervous system is so agitated all day, it's really hard, right? And I think it starts with definitely going back to the base. Like, I'm sure part of the answer, and I'm curious also to hear what you guys think about this. I'm sure part of the answer is going back to the basics of really training the low key methods that we have, so that we can maybe apply them later in the like extreme stress situations too. But yeah, what are your thoughts on how to deal with not just the day-to-day stress, but the extreme stress?
Well, I was even excuse me. I was even going to say, like, even before we dive into how to deal with it, my first question is, how do you even acknowledge, or how do you even know that you're in that high level state of stress? Because I think most of us are very comfortable dealing with like the stressful day, you know, oh, this didn't go well, or, you know, whatnot. But like, when you're in that chronic state of stress, that high state of stress, how do you even acknowledge that? You know, because sometimes, and I think there's that like high level state of stress, and then there's the chronic level state of stress where you've been in the state of stress for so long that you kind of think of it like, oh, this is just your norm. Like, I think that's where I'm at, where it's like, I've been so stressed for a long time that I'm just like, oh, this is my norm, and it's not normal. And, you know, your body can only take so much of it before it eventually like breaks down, or you break down, or, you know, whatever happens. But But I'm curious to know, because I think I even struggle with this myself, like knowing, having the awareness of like, this is high levels, like this is high maxed out stress. Like, how do you even recognize that?
So many big questions. It is a great question. And I wonder too if like it's different for everyone. I don't know. Like, because I could say what I like for me, what stress feels like in my body, but I wonder if we all would say the same thing even.
Yeah, go ahead. Share. What does it feel like in your body?
Okay, so for me, it's more like it's a very heavy, it's usually like right in the middle of my chest. And it feels like almost like a really heavy bowling ball, but like also it's like yeah, it's like this pressure and almost like feeling like at the same time that I want to run away. I just want to run away. Yeah, that's for me what I would say. What about you guys?
Yeah, very similar. So for me, it's this tightness in the chest. There's like, I don't know, there's something sitting in there. It's nothing tangible, but it's like in my chest, there's this something that creates a lot of tension in the chest. So that's like, my breathing is more shallow. And then I also very quickly notice my heart rate. So like my heart just starts to pound like really loudly. Like I think, oh my God, people can see my shirt moving up and down, like in a cartoon like that. So yeah, that is definitely it. And also this, what you mentioned, oh, I want to run away, but also with my mind. Like my mind is, I feel like there's a bouncing ball that someone threw into my head and it's just like going crazy in there. It's like running. And those are my thoughts, right? They're just running from one end to the next and here and there and up and down and over and under. So that I have that too. The running away, like physically, yes, also, but also the like, I don't know, someone's doing a big nod in my head with all this great stuff that's there.
I feel stress in my shoulders and my back. Like y'all feel it in your chest. I feel it back here. I get real tight. Like tightness is a very common thing. That's how I physically feel stress. And then I think emotionally, like I feel heavy, as Amanda and I think Stephanie, you were both sharing that. But as I'm sitting here thinking about this, I'm like, God, my shoulders always feel tight. And I've gotten, again, just so used to like, that's just tightness. Like, oh, and I've even made excuses for it. I've even said like, oh, well, it's turning 30, it's entering that season of a year of your life. And I'm like, no, like I shouldn't be this tight all the time. And like, yeah, I'm just having like a moment of reflection here, being like, oh, I think I've been carrying around like a lot of weight on my shoulders for so many years that I've never even fully been able to like release it. And so it's just now been like a chronic state of tightness. And I think I have a new project to work on.
I think this is so perfect because I don't think that it's unusual, right? I think many of us have this experience of feeling stress, and maybe as going back to Stephanie's, like the low level, right? And it's like, it's just a little bit, and then it's just a little bit, but then that's compounding, but then it becomes, as you were mentioning, Tyler, this like norm, right? There's like, you built this baseline. It's like, oh, well, that's just how I feel on a normal day, like tightness in the shoulders, heavy in the chest, like that's just how I feel. And this is also, I think, comes from, I think culturally, we really almost in some ways shame the stress, right? Like, you shouldn't feel stressed. It's no big deal. Like, I don't know how many times I've heard like, oh, somebody has it worse than you. And I'm like, but I feel something right now. Like, I know maybe there's someone is, but right now I don't feel like very good. I feel stressed. And so I think we like dismiss this, and we're so quick to shove it down or ignore it, or not address the stress. And then it starts, as we were talking about, it gets louder and louder and louder and starts coming out in other ways. But I just think it is so important to even have that awareness of, oh, this is what stress feels like in my body. So I start to feel it, and I'm like, okay, well, what are we gonna, I think it's coming back to that question of like, well, what do we do, right, when that stress is compounded, or there's, a life event that's extremely challenging and we're in that high state of stress. Like, what do we do?
Can I I was just gonna I was gonna throw in one more thing here, because Amanda had said, like, so many people will say like, oh, you have nothing to be stressed about, or they're trying to like downplay how you're feeling. But then also on the flip side, as a society, especially as like, a society like here in the States where everything is so like work focused and like it's all about the hustle, like stress is also a badge of honor. It's like, it's like, oh, if you're not stressed out, or if you're not working to your max, then you're not performing to your highest standards. And so I think we live in this chronic space where it's like, oh, well, you shouldn't be stressed, but hey, if you're not stressed, you're not really doing it right. And so it's this like almost oxymoron of stuff. But I wanted to throw that in there because I think it's two layers.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really great.
Yeah, that's such an important point of it all. It's like so normalized and socially so acceptable. Yeah, just you're stressed. Okay, take a pill, drink some wine, whatever, and just like be chill about it. And then we're super casual about all the numbing methods too, right? Like, where does it end? It's like, okay, well, yeah, people die from this. Okay, fine. It's like, so, okay, that's just what it is. And no one does anything about it. Well, not no one, but, I'm exaggerating right now. What I was going to say before is just, as you two were sharing that, for me, it occurs to me that probably, like I alluded to it earlier, the answer is when we are in these like lower level stress states and we can't even see what's going on there, and we first have to get to the super high level of stress before we stop, because our bodies literally force us, right? Then maybe the answer is not to deal with the stress once it's like all the way up there, but to start when maybe we are not even stressed, right? To start to build some, self-care habits. And I think it's easiest to work on these things and do self-development, self-growth, whatever you want to call it, when you are okay. Because you're probably not going to get a lot of growth out of you if you constantly show up. Like, imagine you show up to your therapy sessions or to your coaching sessions or to your whatever sessions, and you're constantly in kind of like what I would call like the red energy, right? Like the last 3% on your phone, like the last 3% on your emotional self that day. Like, you're not going to get a lot out of it because you can't access that juicy flow state where you can do a lot of great things. And so I say it's like the basics of, take care of yourself and find some ways when you are actually okay. And then maybe it's easier to apply those things once you are not okay. It's kind of like, doing this like self-care school, self-care dojo for yourself, and then flexing that muscle, building that muscle of, okay, how do I deal with stress? What do I do? What are my options? What are all the tools that I have available? And then it becomes easier for when we are actually stressed.
I also think what you said, Stephanie, there, one, it's very profound what you just said, because we're not really we're not really a prevention society. We're more of like, oh, we have a problem now, let's cure it. and it's actually very radical to think from the prevention lens of like, how do we even stop ourselves from actually getting to that place? And I think it's, I just lost my train of thought. It just went away. But I will say that it is, I think, pretty radical to think from the lens of prevention versus curing. Because I think if we never get ourselves to a place of stress, and like, this is actually really huge to think about. I'm going to go there because why not? From an economics standpoint, think about, because we all live kind of in this chronic state of stress, and Stephanie alluded to it with like, oh, we get off of work and what do? We reach for a bottle of wine or a glass of wine, or we get drinks, or, you know, we indulge in foods, or whatever we do, we binge watch TV. Y'all, if we weren't chronically stressed out, think about how much money our economy would lose, because we weren't drinking every single night, or we weren't spending hours and hours and hours binging TV. Like, again, I think a lot of our problems, I'm going to go here because why the hell not? I think a lot of our problems that we have in this society and in our world are so normalized, and we still struggle with them because they're good for the economy. They're really good for the economy. If we keep people sick, if we keep people, you know, addicted to things, they're going to keep buying, and they're going to keep, you know, consuming. And that's really good for the economy. But is it really good for our health? Is it really good for our well-being? That's a really radical thing to say. But I do think there's a lot of this, because also, what else do we do when we're stressed out? We go, we shop, we buy something to make ourselves feel better. You know, how many times, you know, you work really, really hard and you like exhaust yourself, and then you go, well, I really need to treat myself, so I'm going to go buy this or get that. And we're just mindlessly numbing and consuming and finding out ways to like deal with how we're feeling without actually stopping to address how are we actually feeling. Wow.
It's the proactive, reactive, like the two, and then those reactive things, the things that we almost do like mindlessly, subconsciously. And I don't think, you know, any of those things necessarily can be labeled as like quote unquote bad. Like if that's something that for you is helpful. However, I think highlighting this awareness of, okay, is it just like Band-Aid solution? Is it just a temporary fix for a longer term thing? Because I think this is also too what you're talking about, Tyler, as well, is that we often have these like, and even Stephanie, you mentioned, right? These like numbing, like we're just like having these Band-Aid solutions for the symptom instead of really addressing like, okay, if today it's, yeah, I'm gonna, you know, binge watch a show or, you know, have a drink with a friend. Like, again, I don't want us to come from this space of like a judgment space. I think what I'm really wanting to highlight here is that we're also looking at that awareness. Like, it's almost like what's the intention behind that, right? Is it a numbing behavior, or is it just oh no, I'm here like out with my friend and we're enjoying the time together, right? Because I think that there's a big difference. Like, because sometimes I have this experience where I'm like doing the things that we would necessarily be like, oh, like that's like, lately I have this like major Candy Crush obsession. So I'm like sitting there playing Candy Crush, and like it's become a joke actually, where I'm like, just, you know, what are you doing now? Like probably playing Candy Crush, right? And so like for me, I think, oh no, like I'm doing that self-reflection, and noticing that there might be this slight level of judgment in there of like, oh, I'm judging myself because I'm playing these games and I'm out here preaching like, oh, you don't want to numb your feelings and blah, 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 right? So I'm really holding up the mirror and being like, wait a minute, is this numbing behavior or is it just something like, I really enjoy playing Candy Crush. There's just something about Candy Crush that is fun for me, right? So I think the awareness that we have, like, is important too, right? Like, it's not just about, oh, well, if you're doing these things, then that's not good, change the behavior. It's having the awareness and the intention of, oh no, like, I'm just sitting here playing my game because I enjoy playing the game and it's fun and it, helps me to shift my mood but it's not, we're not pushing away like those feelings, right?
That's such a, oh my God, I love this topic because I also have a very similar experience lately. So I've gotten into video editing. I do these really fun videos and I'm having the best time. This is so much fun. I've really, over the last, I think I started this in March or so, I've really fallen in love with the process of video editing. I just do this for fun. There's no money I want to make with this. This is not for work or anything, right? It's just for me, like such a cool hobby right now. And I love it. And I actually just finished a project and then I started a new one. And I already have like a lot of clips for this one. So it's much easier and it's going to go much quicker than the first project. And I've fallen into a pretty bad rabbit hole. And I think it's a bad rabbit hole of spending a lot of time video editing. And maybe that's a good question we can pose here. Is like, when does the intention change, basically? When does the passion end? When does the love end? When does the I'm doing this for me end? And where does the obsession, the numbing, the addictive behavior start, right? Because over the weekend, I was sitting there and I was doing my video editing. And again, like, this is so fun for me. But I realized, oh, I'm not setting boundaries, right? So one night I got to bed way too late. It was way past my bedtime. And then I noticed, I reflected on this and I noticed, wait a minute, this behavior seems oddly familiar. Not setting boundaries and all of that stuff. So I realized, oh, I think I've just switched from the addictive behavior of emotional eating to the addictive behavior of video editing. Because it's like this, how did I say this? Like, I haven't this is so interesting. Like, I haven't eaten a lot of chocolate, and I usually I eat a little bit of chocolate here and there, and I haven't eaten like in a lot of days. And I realized, oh yeah, there's just no occasions for it. I'm just video editing, and it's like I'm not eating chocolate when I'm on my computer because I love my computer, and I don't want to get my chocolate hands on it. So I just realized, okay, it's, yes, I'm having fun, but then it got to this place where I wasn't really paying attention to myself anymore. Like, I neglected a little bit my self-care and, went to bed too late. And that's when I knew, at least in this instance, okay, it's gotten a little bit obsessive, a little bit on the dark side of things. Yeah. So, but that's my question for you guys. Like, where's the switch? Like, how do you know your switch? Amanda, with your Candy Crush, can you tell when is it addictive? When is it just fun and passion?
No, yeah, great question. And I think you kind of already sort of answered this in the sense that, when it's 3 a.m. and I'm like, ooh, I gotta win. There's the competitiveness, right? I'm like, I gotta be number one. I gotta be the first one. They have 50 levels. I gotta have 50 and 51 because I gotta be first. And 3 a.m, it's waking me up, those types of things. When it's sleep is important, self-care is important. I think it's the boundaries that you're mentioning, right? When it starts to overlap and it starts to become almost more important than, not even consciously, but when other things that are important for me start falling off and these things it's being replaced with those types of things, you know?
Yeah, and it's not like an intentional decision, right? You're not
Yes.
you're deciding this like in kind of like some weird foggy brain of yours. And one thing that just also came to me, it's this, oh, just one more. I will just have one more glass, one more candy bar, one more.
Yep.
I'm just gonna edit one more quick clip here, right? So that's also where I know, oh, wait a minute. Am I really doing this for fun right now?
Oh gosh, I'm I'm laughing at this because I like to go to the casino. Okay, that is my thing. I like to go play penny slots. I'm not not a major gambler. I don't drop like some people will take like thousands and thousands of dollars to casinos and whatnot. No, I take like $100 and I go play like the slot machines. But I know when it's crossed the boundary or when it's crossed that like line, because I get to that place where it's like, no, I gotta win. I gotta get my money back. I'm gonna like, and you go to a casino not with the intentions of like walking away with your money. Like you kind of go with the intentions of like, I'm gonna go play. If I win, awesome. If I lose, well, that's probably what's gonna happen. Like that's my mindset going into a casino. But I will get to that stage where something will switch and it's like, no, you can't have my money. Like I'm gonna win you back. I'm gonna go, like I'm going to the ATM, I'm pulling out more money, or I'm gonna stay here and I'm gonna play, I'm gonna play more games until I'm victorious. And again, it's like this weird competitive side, and it's also like again, it crosses the boundaries, because you go into a casino and you say, okay, I'm gonna take $100, and if you lose $100, you're supposed to walk out. You're supposed to be like, okay, I'm done. I had my fun. Let's go home. Not, let me go hit up an ATM, or not, let me stay up and edit one more video or play one more level of Candy Crush. Like, but we've all been there. And I think it does come down to the awareness, coming back to what we started off with, which is this awareness of when does it cross your boundaries? When does it become not a healthy thing? Because I really love to binge watch TV every once in a while, because I really need a day where I just sit on the couch and watch a TV show for like 9 hours. And I'm totally okay with that. Like that is something that I have set as an established, like that's part of my self-care, is like every once in a while I will have like a binge day where I just watch TV and I don't do anything else. And that's very healthy. But it starts to get into an issue if I do that for like 2 days or 3 days. Obviously, now it's like, okay, now it's becoming an issue, because now it's crossing the boundaries that I've set around what is healthy and what is not healthy.
And I think it's also important to mention boundaries for sure, because I think we've all touched on this. I also want to say that it doesn't even necessarily have to be so attached to the binge watching, the Candy Crush, the video editing. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be attached to that. It's also the like, are we avoiding dealing with the stress or whatever that is that we're like, are we avoiding? Like for me, I know that, okay, yes, in the moment as I'm like doing the activity, I'm like, okay, if I'm staying up like, till 3 a.m. playing Candy Crush, this is a problem. But if also outside of playing my Candy Crush, if I'm not like addressing the stress, if I'm not, doing my meditations, if I'm not, going for a massage, or if I'm not, doing the things that are the self-care routine beyond that habit or that, enjoyment, right? Like if it's outside of that where I'm constantly like pushing down the stress, ignoring those emotions, that also too, I think is a good sign, right? That like we're not paying attention, we're not actually addressing the emotions. I think that's also important to be aware of as well, right? But yeah, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're so right. It's like a combination of both of those things. And also, just what I want to highlight as we're coming to an end here for everyone, that it's okay, like it's so woven into our day-to-day lives to be addicted to all of these things. And we haven't even talked about the worst one, scrolling on these little
I'm surprised that one didn't come up.
demon computers. I don't know.
That'll be our next episode. We'll talk about our social media addictions.
1 hour just on that. We could fill an hour with that. Yeah. No, but it's like it's so woven into daily lives, and we're so bombarded with it every day. So if you find yourself sitting there at 3 a.m. playing Candy Crush, or if you spend more money than intended in the casino, or you sit there for like 2 days and watch something or video edit if you're like geeky like me, then and that's okay. Don't judge yourself too harshly, because it's part of life, and that's okay. I think when we just notice these patterns over time and realize, oh, this is not working for me, going to bed so late, like I feel tired the next day and so on, and then just make some smarter decisions. But it happens. And even like for myself, I can definitely say like my big addiction from my earlier days is definitely like emotional eating. And it's not that I'm supposed to just completely get rid of it. And it's not like alcohol where you can just say like, okay, I'm never going to drink it again and get sober, right? It's like you need food, and we can all like emotionally eat, it's like every time you eat basically is emotional eating. And it's more like building that better relationship with that hobby, with that pattern, with that habit, whatever. And I think it starts with forgiving ourselves and being okay and knowing we're human. We're not the computer. We're definitely not the computers.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way to wrap up. Tyler, you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to add, like, at the end here, like the last thing that came up was just be kind to yourself. Like be really kind to yourself. And, awareness takes time to build, and this is an evolution, y'all. Like you're not going to perfect this the first time you try this. And so come to the table with a lot of kindness, a lot of grace for yourself, a lot of forgiveness, because you're going to slip, you're going to make the mistakes, but like we're humans, we make the mistakes, we slip, but we just keep getting up and we keep trying, and yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah. And I love that we spent like so much time just now also just laughing at these little silly habits that we have, right? Like that's what it's all about. Like share with a friend and just have a laugh about it. Like that's okay.
Share with us. We want to know what is everybody else's like little secret, habit.
Definitely share that with us. We're so curious. Yeah. Can you top our geekiness and our 3 a.m. phone plays and whatnot? Yeah. Let us know. Well, thank you for watching, everyone. It's been fun.
We will see you next week, right?
See you next week.
Bye,
all right.
everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Come As You Are, the podcast. You can follow the show on Instagram at Kaya the Podcast and on YouTube and Facebook by searching Kaya the Podcast. If you haven't already done so, please help us keep the conversations going by subscribing, rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast. And be sure to join us next time for another deep conversation.